The power of not reacting. The morning train sighed as it slid into the station, breathing out a cloud of warm air and old stories. I stepped inside with my coffee held carefully in both hands, the lid already loosening from the steam. The car smelled like metal, newspaper ink, and a hint of cologne that reminded me of my father's old aftershave. People stood shoulder to shoulder, eyes half awake, minds already racing toward meetings, deadlines, and the quiet hope that today might be easier than yesterday. Across from me stood a man in a dark jacket. His jaw was tight, his foot tapping like it was arguing with the floor. When the train jolted forward, my elbow bumped his arm. Coffee splashed dangerously close to disaster. "Watch it," he snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut through the hum of the train. Every muscle in my body reacted before my mind did. My chest tightened. My face warmed. Words rushed to the tip of my tongue, words I had used many times before in moments like this. Words that always felt powerful for a second and regrettable for much longer. I wanted to fire back. I wanted to explain. I wanted to win, but I didn't. Instead, I took a slow breath. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something beyond the anger. Tired eyes. Shoulders carrying more than just a jacket. A man who might have woken up already exhausted. "Sorry about that," I said quietly. He blinked, surprised. Like he had prepared for a fight and suddenly found himself standing alone in the ring. His foot stopped tapping. He looked away, muttering something that might have been an apology or might have been relief. The train continued forward. My coffee stayed in its cup. And something inside me shifted. That moment stayed with me all day. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was different. For once, I had chosen not to react. And in that choice, I felt something unexpected. I felt light. I felt free. For most of my life, reacting had been automatic. Someone criticized me, and I defended myself. Someone disrespected me, and I returned the favor. Someone pushed, and I pushed back harder. I thought this was strength. I thought this was how you survived in a loud, fast world, but that morning on the train planted a quiet question in my mind. What if not reacting was actually the stronger move? The idea followed me like a shadow. At work, a colleague dismissed my suggestion in a meeting, waving it away with a careless smile. I felt the familiar spark ignite, the urge to interrupt, to prove my point, to show that I mattered. My heart beat faster. My hands tightened around my pen. I remembered the train. I stayed silent. The meeting moved on. Later that afternoon, the same colleague came to my desk. He spoke more softly then, asking me to explain my idea again. This time, he listened. Truly listened. By the end of the conversation, he nodded, impressed, and suggested we collaborate on it together. I leaned back in my chair after he left, staring at the ceiling, a slow smile spreading across my face. I hadn't lost anything by not reacting. I had gained respect. That evening, I thought about how much energy I had spent over the years reacting to things that did not deserve my energy. Arguments that went nowhere. Online comments that ruined my mood. Small insults that grew into long grudges. Each reaction felt justified in the moment, but together they formed a heavy weight I had been carrying without realizing it. Not reacting felt like setting that weight down. The real test came at home. My younger brother and I had a history that could fill a library. Old rivalries. Old misunderstandings. Old words that still echoed years later. Family gatherings often turned into quiet battlefields, where smiles hid sharp memories and every sentence carried the potential to explode. One night, during dinner, he made a comment about my career. It was subtle, almost polite, but the meaning was clear. Doubt. Judgment. The kind that hurts more because it comes from someone who knows you well. The room seemed to hold its breath. My mother watched me carefully. She knew my temper. She knew how quickly I could turn words into weapons. I felt it rising again. That heat. That familiar storm. I looked at my brother. I saw the same insecurity I had seen in the man on the train. I wondered what fears he carried, what comparisons haunted him when he was alone. I smiled and took another bite of my food. That's one way to look at it, I said calmly. I'm still learning. The tension dissolved like mist in sunlight. The conversation shifted. Laughter returned. Later, as we washed dishes side by side, my brother spoke quietly. I didn't mean it the way it sounded, he said. I know, I replied. And I did. That night, lying in bed, I realized something important. Not reacting did not mean agreeing. It did not mean accepting disrespect. It did not mean becoming weak or passive. It meant choosing peace over ego. It meant understanding that not every comment needs a response. Not every provocation deserves attention, and not every battle is worth fighting. As days turned into weeks, I practiced this new way of being. It was not easy. Sometimes my silence felt uncomfortable, like wearing shoes that did not fit yet. Sometimes people mistook it for indifference. Sometimes I failed and reacted anyway, slamming doors or sending messages I later wished I could erase. But slowly, something changed. I began to notice how much control reactions had over my life. How a single sentence from a stranger could ruin an entire afternoon. How a small inconvenience could steal my joy. How easily my mood could be hijacked. And then I noticed something even more powerful. When I did not react, I stayed in control. A driver cut me off in traffic one afternoon, honking aggressively as he sped away. My heart jumped. My hands gripped the steering wheel. My mind prepared a speech he would never hear. I exhaled. I turned on some music. A song I loved filled the car, warm and familiar. By the time the chorus arrived, the anger was gone, replaced by something almost like gratitude. Gratitude that I had not let a stranger decide how I would feel. That realization changed the way I saw the world. I began to understand that most reactions are about us, not about the situation. They are echoes of past hurts, old fears, unhealed wounds. When someone presses a button, it is because that button already exists. Not reacting gave me space to ask better questions. Why did this bother me so much? What am I really afraid of right now? What would happen if I let this pass? These questions did not always have easy answers. Sometimes they led me to uncomfortable truths about myself. About my need for approval. About my fear of being overlooked. About my habit of measuring my worth through other people's opinions. But in that discomfort, there was growth. One afternoon, I met an old friend for coffee. We had not seen each other in a long time. As we talked, I noticed something familiar in him. He complained about everything. His job. His relationships. The city. The weather. Each complaint was followed by anger, sarcasm, or blame. At one point, he looked at me and said, "You've changed. You're quieter." I laughed softly. Maybe I'm just listening more. He frowned, confused. Doesn't stuff get to you anymore? I thought about it for a moment. It does, I said honestly. I just don't let it drive. He stared into his coffee, swirling it slowly. I wish I could do that. I realized then that not reacting was not just a personal skill. It was a gift you could offer others, simply by example. When you stay calm, you invite calm. When you refuse to escalate, you create space for understanding. When you choose silence, you allow truth to surface. This did not mean becoming emotionless. I still felt deeply. I still cared. I still spoke up when it mattered. But my words came from clarity, not heat. From intention, not impulse. There was a moment at work when this difference became clear. A project I had poured my heart into was criticized publicly by a supervisor. His words were harsh, his tone sharp. I felt embarrassed, exposed, small. The old me would have defended every detail, voice shaking with frustration. The old me would have carried that moment home, replaying it again and again. Instead, I listened. When he finished, I thanked him for the feedback. I asked thoughtful questions. I took notes. The room was silent, surprised by my response. After the meeting, he called me into his office. His voice was different then, calmer. I pushed hard because I see potential, he said. Most people get defensive. You didn't. That project became one of the best experiences of my career. Not because it was easy, but because I grew. The power of not reacting began to show up in the smallest moments too. When someone interrupted me, I paused instead of snapping. When plans changed, I adapted instead of complaining. When mistakes happened, I focused on solutions instead of blame. Life did not become perfect. Problems did not disappear. But my relationship with them changed. I felt less tired, less tense, less like I was constantly bracing for impact. I started sleeping better, laughing more, enjoying silence. One evening, I sat on my porch as the sun dipped low, painting the sky with soft colors. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. Children laughed somewhere down the street. The world felt calm, not because it was quiet, but because I thought about how much of our lives are spent reacting. Reacting to news. Reacting to messages. Reacting to opinions thrown at us from every direction. We are taught that speed is strength, that quick responses show intelligence, that silence is weakness, but maybe true strength is the pause. The pause that allows wisdom to speak. The pause that protects your peace. The pause that reminds you that you always have a choice. Not reacting does not mean you let life walk over you. It means you decide when to step forward and when to step aside. It means you respond with purpose, not pressure. It is not about winning arguments. It is about winning your time, your energy, your inner calm. I still remember that man on the train sometimes. I wonder if he remembers me. I wonder if that brief moment changed anything for him, the way it changed everything for me, and maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. What I know is this. In choosing not to react, I chose myself, and that choice, made again and again in quiet moments, reshaped my life in ways I never expected. So the next time the world pokes you, challenges you, or tries to pull you into its noise, remember this. You do not have to react. You can breathe. You can pause. You can decide. In that space, there is power. I share stories like this every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.